From London, this is the Standard Podcast, and I'm Mark Blunden. Coming up in this episode...
We were also quite close to the stage, so sometimes Taylor would look at us and wave to us.
Taylor Swift's Wembley love story, and there's more to come. But first, Sweden confirmed on Thursday discovery of Europe's first case of a contagious new variant of Mpox called Clade 1. The World Health Organization has declared the virus a global health emergency for the second time in 2 years following an outbreak in the Democratic Republic of the Congo that has spread to other countries. Mpox causes painful skin lesions and can be fatal to people with weakened immune systems. However, the NHS says symptoms usually clear up in a few weeks. UK health chiefs say the risk to this country is low, but they are making contingency plans. To discover more, we're joined by Evening Standard health reporter Daniel Keane. Dan, what is the WHO's global health emergency on Mpox?
A global health emergency is a status which is given by the World Health Organization to what they call extraordinary events. So these are things that pose a really big public health risk through the international spread of disease. And what it does is it triggers a kind of coordinated response internationally to mobilize resources, so getting vaccines, getting testing up and running to curb the spread. I think one of the key things to note is the WHO, while this is an emergency, hasn't declared it a pandemic as they have with previous viruses. What these measures are designed to do is prevent it from becoming a pandemic. So it's kind of proactively getting ahead of the spread of the disease. And I think particularly if you look at where this disease is spreading and the lack of healthcare infrastructure in Central Africa, that's a really important thing to do.
What's the current UK planning?
They're trying to kind of get ahead, making sure we've got enough vaccines for a potential outbreak, making sure we're monitoring people that have travelled from affected regions in Africa, and just getting the message out to the public that this virus is back. I don't think they're concerned. I think the message that they put out yesterday essentially said that the risk to the UK currently is low, but they're trying to strike that fine balance between getting information out there and also telling people not to panic.
What do we know about lessons on contingency planning from COVID?
COVID and Mpox are two completely different viruses. Mpox doesn't transmit as easily as COVID. COVID was quite an unusual virus in many senses because it was airborne and it was also able to transmit asymptomatically, which meant that it spread like wildfire. There was a lot of kind of ingredients that made COVID a very tricky disease, both to track and to contain. Mpox, by contrast, is only spread through close contact. So it's more difficult to infect someone that way. But that doesn't mean it's necessarily straightforward to contain. There is significant spread. We learned today that it has reached Sweden, and it will likely soon turn up in the UK, that this strain. I think there is definitely lessons that have been learned in terms of moving quickly and responding to these incidents with the kind of necessary urgency. I think COVID has also really got the population more interested in viruses and in preventing the spread of viruses. And I think there's a public awareness perhaps that there didn't used to be of how badly these things can become. But there are also other lessons which I think it will take many years for us to learn, and that's in terms of the equitable distribution of vaccines across the world, making sure richer countries aren't stockpiling them. I think there are still issues around that.
What do we know about UK vaccine stocks and current guidance on any suspected Mpox transmission?
We don't know precisely what the stocks look like at the moment, but the UK HSA is confident that there is enough vaccine to go around if this does become an issue in the UK. But it's worth noting that a couple of years ago, the stock of vaccines became a massive problem in the UK. And actually, we had some of the biggest caseloads worldwide, and there were warnings that we'd run out potentially in 10 days. It's really useful to plan ahead with these sorts of things, and hopefully they'll be doing that right now. In terms of good practice, some of the guidance last time actually urged people with Mpox or a contact of someone with Mpox to isolate for 21 days. That's obviously a very difficult thing to do, but that is the advice. Otherwise, it's about avoiding close contact with other people. Don't share towels or bedding. Make sure you call your GP and let them know, and definitely speak to the relevant health authorities if you've had contact with someone that's come from an affected region in Central Africa.
Let's go to the ads. Coming up, hundreds of thousands of fans flocked to see Taylor Swift at Wembley Stadium, including this South London Swiftie, Sophie Hutton, and her mother Angela.
I've been in great
Ormond Street for 72 days, and they just called us up and said, "Well, Sophie would like to go to Taylor Swift." And they're like, "That's a stupid question, yes."
You've been having treatment for cancer, haven't you?
Yeah.
And now it's finished and you can come out and about. This is the best first place to go when you're out of hospital.
Yeah. My favourite song is Shake It Off.
More on Tay-Tay's stellar run of London shows in part 2. Why not hit follow on this podcast in the meantime and give us a rating. Welcome back. Now, by the time the curtain falls on Taylor Swift's latest run of 5 shows at Wembley Stadium for her Eras tour, nearly 750,000 fans will have seen her perform over a record-breaking 8 nights in London in total. It follows the devastating events in Southport last month, where 3 young girls were stabbed to death at a Swift-themed holiday club, and then a foiled terror attack at the singer's Vienna concert. So before we get into the gigs themselves, the Standard Podcast asked ES arts and culture writer Vicky Jessop how the Southport tragedy has affected Swift.
We know she released a statement after the attack, of course, saying like the horror is washing over me and I'm at a complete loss for how to ever convey my sympathies to these families. And this is her first gig since the stabbings, as you mentioned, because her Vienna dates were cancelled because of a foiled terror attack. But she didn't reference the attack on stage, but a source, I believe, told The Sun earlier this week that she's reached out privately to the victims' families. So clearly it is still kind of very much in her mind.
And she's playing 5 nights after earlier doing the triple. How's Swift keeping her act fresh?
This is a mega 3-hour set, but the nice thing about it, I think, in terms of fans, and many of them have booked, more than one ticket to see her during her kind of UK tour. There is a set list, but I think Swift has also made time to include some kind of unique moments, playing songs that are exclusive to each gig. They're pretty much always a secret till the night itself. So, each night we can expect some more big moments. There are different supporting artists for each night of the second run as well. Paramore were there for her June dates, but for her August ones, we're going to see Suki Waterhouse, Ray, Holly Humberstone, Maisie Peters and Sophia Asella take to the stage to support her too. So there's a lot of variety there.
Highlights and surprises so far?
Yes. So talking of keeping things fresh, Ed Sheeran actually did come on stage during the Thursday night gig. This was the first one of her August run. They did a duet for Everything Has Changed and Endgame, which were songs they worked on together. They had a very sweet moment where they sang a duet for Thinking Out Loud, which is obviously Ed Sheeran's mega hit. She called him one of her best friends, all very lovely stuff. And this is kind of a bit of a trend on her previous London run. Hayley Williams of Paramore came on stage to do a duet as well. And in terms of other surprises, I think, the other big one was during her London June run as well, where her boyfriend Travis Kelce came on stage dressed in a top hat and a tuxedo and sent the internet into meltdown. He helped to change costumes. He eventually carried her off stage, very, very campy stuff. So hopefully we'll see some more of that coming up.
Who's been among the celeb fans in the audience over her Wembley run?
Oh my God, there've been loads. So the big internet breaking one was Prince William. He took his kids to see her live. They did a backstage selfie that went viral. We've seen Tom Cruise trading friendship bracelets in the crowd. Paul McCartney was seen dancing to her songs. Hugh Grant went along. And there's also that excellent video of Andrew Scott and Phoebe Waller-Bridge literally running to the VIP tent when the opening bars for her song Style came on. So yeah, you name them, they've probably been there.
Any hints what's next for Taylor after London and future professional and personal plans?
After her London gigs, she finally gets some well-deserved time off. She's finishing the Eras tour with a few dates in Canada, which start in autumn, so they've got a bit of time there. And I think her plan seems to be to head to Kansas City and spend some time with her boyfriend, Travis Kelce. And apart from that, you think it would be time for a bit of downtime, but the answer to that is apparently no. Taylor Swift is still deep into her ongoing project of re-recording all of her hit albums. And many Swifties think that the next release will be Reputation, Taylor's version. And we've already heard songs from that album appear, on TV shows like Prime Video's Wilderness, which came out last year. And this has also been floating around for a while now. But in 2022, it was announced that she'd be directing her first feature film. We've not heard anything more on that, but, it's a safe bet to assume it's still in the pipeline. We know she's always busy, so there might be a surprise announcement on that in the next few months too. Who knows?
There's much more news and features in the Evening Standard newspaper at standard.co.uk. The Standard Podcast is back tomorrow, Saturday at 4 p.m.